He texted another woman in front of me and told me to wait, just for a minute, and I did. That was the moment I understood I was not his girlfriend. I was his pause. I was standing on the cracked tiles of an empty Lisbon tram stop at dawn. My phone was buzzing in my palm, and the thought that hit me was simple and humiliating. I had never been chosen. Not once. Not even on the days he said he loved me. The air smelled like wet metal and old coffee. The city was still half asleep, and I remember thinking how quiet everything was compared to the noise in my chest. That tight, restless feeling had been following me for months, maybe years. It was the feeling you get when you already know the truth, but keep pretending you do not. His name was Adrian, and if I am honest, he was never cruel in obvious ways. He did not shout. He did not hit. He did not insult me directly. That made it harder to admit what he was actually doing, because what he did was softer, and therefore more poisonous. He kept me close without ever holding on. We met 3 years earlier, in a crowded co-working space near the river. Two strangers sharing a power outlet and a joke about overpriced espresso. He had that distracted charm of someone who always seemed halfway somewhere else. I mistook it for depth, for mystery, for complexity, the way so many women do when a man never fully arrives. At first it felt like timing issues. His job was unstable. His ex was still in his life, in ways he could not clearly explain. He needed space. He needed time. He needed to figure things out. I told myself that patience was love, that being understanding was maturity, that not demanding too much made me special. The pattern revealed itself slowly, never all at once. He would be intense for a few weeks, attentive, warm, almost present. Then something would shift. His replies would slow, plans would become vague. His voice would carry that careful distance, the one that says I am here but not really with you. Each time he pulled away, there was a reason. A work crisis, a family issue, a woman from his past resurfacing with questions and unresolved feelings. Each time I became smaller, quieter, more accommodating. When he disappeared for the first time, it was subtle. No breakup, no explanation, just fewer messages until there were none. I spent weeks replaying conversations in my head, wondering what I had done wrong, what I had said, what I should have been instead. Then one night, after nearly 2 months of silence, he showed up at my door with tired eyes and that familiar half-smile. He said he missed me. He said things had been complicated. He said he just needed something real again. I let him in, not just into my apartment, but back into the space I had never truly closed. That was the beginning of the loop. Him leaving when life pulled him towards something new, someone new, a possibility that looked shinier than me. Him returning when it all fell apart, when he felt lonely, rejected, unanchored. I was always there, steady, predictable, safe. I told myself I was strong for handling it. Flexible, emotionally intelligent, the kind of woman who could love without clinging. Beneath that story was a quieter truth. I was afraid that if I asked for more, I would be left completely. There were moments that should have woken me up sooner. Like the night he canceled our weekend trip because an old friend from Berlin was in town. A friend who later appeared in his social media photos with her head tilted just a little too close to his shoulder. Or the time he said he was not ready for labels while introducing me as someone he was seeing. Never his girlfriend, never his partner, never anything solid. Every time I felt the sting of being kept just out of reach, I swallowed it. I turned it inward. I told myself not to be dramatic, not to push, not to scare him away. Somehow, his fear of commitment became my responsibility to manage. The worst part was that he was gentle when he returned. He listened. He held my face in his hands. He said all the right things without ever promising anything real. That tenderness made me doubt my own pain. It made me feel ungrateful for wanting clarity, for wanting to be chosen without competition. I became the pause between his attempts at something better. The emotional rest stop where he refueled before continuing his search. I knew it on some level. But knowing and accepting are not the same thing. The realization did not come during a fight or a dramatic confrontation. It came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a quiet bookstore. I was standing in the psychology section, holding a book I did not plan to buy. I saw his name light up my phone after weeks of distance. Instead of relief, I felt a wave of exhaustion so deep it almost made me sit down on the floor. The message was simple. He asked how I was. He added that he had been thinking about me. I understood in that moment that nothing had changed. He was checking if I was still available, still open, still waiting. I replied, politely, briefly, without warmth. The shift was immediate. His messages became more frequent, more emotional. He suggested meeting. He talked about missing our connection. For the first time, I saw it clearly. He wanted access, not commitment. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I felt both stupid and strangely calm. It was the kind of calm that comes when denial finally gives up. I replayed every return, every apology without change. Every promise that dissolved the moment something more exciting appeared. I realized that he had never chosen me because he never had to. I was always there, always understanding, always available. By making myself so easy to return to, I taught him that leaving had no consequences. The next morning, I did something that felt almost unreal. I stopped replying. No explanation, no closure speech, no final attempt to be understood. I simply removed myself from the loop, quietly, decisively. The way you step away from something that has already proven it will not change. Days passed, then weeks. The silence was heavy but clean. I missed him, of course I did. But I missed the version of him that existed mostly in my imagination. Not the man who kept me as an option. Then the messages started again. First casual, then confused, then anxious. He asked if I was okay. If he had done something wrong. If we could talk. For the first time, he sounded unsettled, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. I did not respond. That was when his tone changed completely. He showed up where he knew I might be. He left voicemails that cracked at the edges. He admitted he was scared of losing me. He said he did not realize how important I was until now. I listened without answering, feeling something new and unfamiliar settle in my chest. He was afraid, but not because he had chosen me. He was afraid because the safety net was gone. The place he landed when things fell apart was suddenly empty. That fear was not love. It was loss of control. When we finally met weeks later, it was in a small cafe near the river. A place where we had once planned a future we never named. He looked at me like someone seeing a door close in slow motion. For the first time, I saw him clearly too. He asked if we could start over. If I could give him another chance. If we could try for real this time. I understood then that the irony was complete. The moment I stopped being available, I became valuable. By then, the cost was too high. I told him calmly that I was done. Not angry, not bitter, just finished. He looked at me with something like disbelief, as if the option had learned how to walk away on its own. As I left that cafe, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I had won anything, but because I had finally stopped losing myself. I knew that the role I once played in his life was now empty. The truth is, I was never his backup plan by accident. I agreed to it by staying. When I left, the backup plan did not disappear. It simply changed shape. It became his silence, his unanswered messages, his long, empty evenings, his own company. And this time, when he reached for comfort, there was no one there but himself. After that day, I thought the story would fade quietly. I thought distance would do its work and turn him into a memory with softened edges. But reality was less neat and more honest. Healing was not a straight line. It was a series of small recognitions that kept arriving when I least expected them. I started noticing how much space his uncertainty had occupied in my life. How my schedule had once revolved around the possibility of his availability. How my moods had been calibrated to his attention. Without him constantly hovering at the edge of my days, there was an unfamiliar stillness. It felt both peaceful and unsettling. Some evenings I caught myself reaching for my phone out of habit. Not because I needed him, but because I was used to checking if I mattered. Each time I stopped myself, I felt a quiet grief for the woman who had mistaken endurance for love. Friends asked what happened between us. I found it hard to explain without sounding foolish or dramatic. Nothing explosive had occurred. No betrayal dramatic enough to justify the pain. I began to understand that being kept as an option does not feel like rejection at first. It feels like hope. Like proximity to something that might become real. If you just wait a little longer. Bend a little more. Ask for a little less. Weeks passed, and his presence slowly shifted from a constant ache to an occasional echo. He still tried from time to time. Messages late at night that said he missed me. That he had never felt the same with anyone else. That he was struggling. Each time I read them, I felt clarity instead of temptation. Because I could hear the pattern now. The timing was always wrong in the same way. His messages arrived when he was alone. When something else had ended. When distraction had failed him. Once I saw it, I could not unsee it. There was one night, months later, when I ran into him unexpectedly at a small gathering on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place where conversations are low and music hums in the background like a shared secret. He looked thinner. More tired. Less certain of his own charm. We spoke briefly, politely. Like people who once shared something intimate, but now only share history. I noticed how carefully he watched me. As if searching for a door that might still be unlocked. He told me he had been alone for a while. That dating felt empty. That he missed what we had. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old reflex. The urge to comfort. To soften his discomfort. But it passed quickly. Replaced by something steadier. I realized then that my absence had not taught him how to love differently. It had simply forced him to sit with himself. That was never my job to facilitate. Walking home that night, I felt an unexpected tenderness toward my past self. The woman who stayed. Who waited. Who hoped. Not because she was weak, but because she believed in connection. I forgave her silently. The truth settled in gradually. I had not lost him. I had lost the version of myself that accepted being half-loved. That loss felt like a necessary ending. Not a tragedy. Sometimes I imagine him alone in his apartment, scrolling through conversations that no longer respond, replaying moments he once took for granted. I do not feel satisfaction or revenge. Only a quiet understanding of how roles reverse when availability disappears. Because when I left without drama, without explanations, without begging to be seen, I did not punish him. I simply removed the cushion that softened his fall. In doing so, I finally chose myself. Now, when I think about love, it no longer feels like waiting in the wings, hoping to be called forward. It feels like standing fully in the light, knowing that if someone does not step toward me willingly, I will not chase them into the dark. If he ever wondered when he lost me, the answer is simple and unremarkable. He lost me the moment he assumed I would always be there. Because the only thing more fragile than love is the illusion that someone will wait forever. In the end, I was never the backup plan that broke him. I was the mirror he avoided. When I walked away, the only thing left to keep him company was the truth he had been postponing. His loneliness was no longer shared. For the first time, it belonged entirely to him.